Hello everybody, welcome back to This Is How We Do It. You're looking at a Kubota ZD326 S zero turn. I don't know what the S means and I really don't care. This mower was purchased back in '06, which makes it about 14 years old. Has been an excellent mower. They're currently, I'm showing 230 hours on the tachometer. So for 14 years old, I consider that pretty low time. There's a lot of contractors out there that could put that many hours on in less than a year, for sure. So I recently, it's been a good mower, no issues, very low maintenance, basic maintenance, oil changes, but I have had 3 issues come up recently that 2 I felt were avoidable. The other was a design flaw, and I'll cover that in more detail. So the first issue, and it's happened to me 3 or 4 times already. Right here, you have what they call anti-scalper wheels, and they're mounted on a vertical axle, and you can adjust them using collars, and they're held on with a simple spring-loaded pin right here. And the problem I ran into was I was out mowing the other day, and I looked down and saw the vertical axle, the whole assembly, actually go by me. And I looked down and it was completely missing on the frame there. And so this is about the 4th time it's happened over the last several years. And what happens is these spring-loaded pins, if you catch them on a branch or something and they pull up, they actually fling themselves off. So what I did, I'm getting tired of it because this was kind of costly. I spent $20 for 3 collars, of which half of that was shipping. I was pissed. So anyways, so just get yourself some tie wraps and basically lock that spring down, and that's what you can see right here. Worked out pretty good. And I did that on both sides. Okay, so the next issue I ran into, it happened last year. This mower belt is a double, what they call basically a double layer. It's a dual type belt that fits in a dual slot on the canopy. I mean on the pulleys. So what happened was this belt, something got in here, was trapped with the cover on, and got in underneath the belt and caused it to shift up. So it was still on the pulley, everything was functioning, but I did notice something was burning. And if you look closely here, you can see that when the belt shifted up, it melted the cover. So I was going to replace that cover, but I thought about it some more, and what I've decided to do is to go without the covers so that it, I guess in theory, might run a little bit cooler, but will be less apt to trap things, rocks or twigs or branches, whatever, and cause that problem to happen. Furthermore, I can be sitting on the machine and look straight down and see what's going on down there. That's the right side, and the left side, which I got the cover on, but with the cover off, I can do the same thing. So I replaced the belt, and that's the way I'm going to run it. I think it's going to work out fine. I'm above it and protected from it, but it gives me good visibility and quick access. And then when I clean up with the blower, it's a simple, I don't have to remove any covers, and it's a simple job to clean up. So the third issue I ran into was there's a gearbox pulley down underneath there, and I'm putting my finger at it, but basically it's this right here. I call it the gearbox pulley, and if you look closely, this is the part I took out. This part, there's a bushing there, and the part is totally wallered out. And when it was on the shaft, the output shaft, it was just all over the place. And I knew something funky was going on. And so finally, I got smart, and I lifted up the cover like this with the belt engaged, and I could look down there, and what I saw was unbelievable. It was wallering all over the place and causing the belt to flap and slap and just do everything that it shouldn't do. So I knew immediately I couldn't use it anymore until I fixed it. So what I ended up doing was, well, what I thought part of the problem was, after I pulled the gearbox out, I thought maybe the bearings were bad, but it bothered me because the machine only had 225 hours, and bearings should last a whole lot longer, and I've always been good about changing the gear oil. But I went ahead and ordered all new seals for the input and output shaft, and then the 3 bearings inside the gearbox, and replaced everything. There was some play on the output shaft. As it turns out, that play was normal. And so, in theory, I could have just put the original bearings back in and it would have been fine. I also replaced, there's a housing underneath the deck, and I replaced the upper and lower seal. I highly recommend you do that if you get into any of this. And I replaced the bearing. There's a center bearing that the output shaft goes in and kind of locks everything in place, with the upper bearing in the gearbox and the lower bearing down in the housing. And didn't really need to do that, but I did need to replace the seals. They were shot. But that's pretty much what I did. The new pulley is it's a very expensive part. It was 135 bucks. And I noticed in the new design, in the new pulley, there was no bushing. Frankly, I don't understand why there would be a bushing in there. But in the new part, there is not a bushing. It's just solid steel with a keyway. And it's my gut feeling that Kubota figured this out, that there was a problem, and they changed, made a slight design in their change. So I'm going to give some tips on how to get at these parts and change the belt. And so I'll get back with you in just a minute. So I'm down here level with the mower deck, and what I'd like to do is give you some tips on how to do maintenance on the belt, or getting access to the gearbox, which is right under there. So the first thing that I did was to get this idler spring out of the way. And I'm going to try to do it while I'm holding the camera, but there it is. You can see that basically released all the tension on that spring. Now, the tool I used is actually a exhaust spring remover tool that was designed especially for exhaust springs for my snowmobiles, and it has worked really good in that application, so I thought I'd give it a try. You can actually make something similar to this using a screwdriver and putting a slot in it with a die grinder. Bottom line is, you want to get that idler spring out of the way. And basically what that does, obviously, is releases the tension so you can then gain access to the belt. Now, before you remove the belt, I do believe you have to remove the gearbox with the gearbox pulley on it, and that's not a big deal. The idler spring mechanism, which is right here, I think you can see that, that has to come out, and there's a bolt back here, a nut and bolt, and that's pretty simple to get out. It's not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and put this spring back on just to show you how slick this is, and I may need to set the phone down to get this thing back, but I really wanted you to see that. And let's see if I can pull this off without making myself look like a fool. Basically, there. That's how slick that works. And the spring's back in place. Idler, everything looks good. And I'll show you. You can see that, again, I'll show you this spring. You might be able to go to Snowmobile site and look for a exhaust spring tool, but you can also make something yourself, and I think it'll work just fine. The other option you might have too is use a strap to pull that idler off the spring, but I'm not keen on that because I don't want to stretch that spring out too much. I want it to do its job, and you want to maintain tension on that. So the other thing I recommend doing is to leave the deck in place, and you can articulate this front axle and kick the whole thing up. That's how you access the blades, and you'll have access to the housings underneath. Do not take the, I did not take the deck off, and the main reason for that is you have to have access underneath. And these decks, especially this commercial deck, is very, very heavy. And so with it on the machine and rocked up, the deck obviously comes with it, and then you can access underneath because you have to pull that housing out of there. When you pull the gearbox off, the housing will drop out, and it's nice to have access. And you can do all of this by yourself. I didn't have any help, and it was not a problem. So once again, I'm on my ZD326 Kubota zero-turn mower, and I'm going to go ahead and fire this thing up and show you how you can access this thing and check to see if everything's working right. Basically, I'm going to fire it up, I'm going to move out in the grass, engage the belt, and pull the cover up and let you see underneath there. Gas. I typically don't engage it at idle, but I don't do it at wide open throttle. Just easier on the system. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the mower deck in gear. Gear it running. And you can see down there everything's turning. The pulley's turning nice and smooth, not wallowing like it was. Look at my left side pulley. I don't see any issues there. And you can see the right side pulley. No problems there. about it. I'm going to pick up in a minute with the exploded view of the parts list and show you the parts that I replaced, and we'll call it a day. Okay, I'm back in the shop, and I just wanted to show you these blow-ups of what I've been talking about. This is the ZD326 mower deck, and that's the center pulley under the gearbox, which is this part here. And this little shaft here fits down in a seal, which I'll show you in a minute. So I replaced, there's the tension spring I showed you that we released, and I thought that was pretty slick. So there's a part we replaced. Here's the center pulley number, K5371-33520. How you like that for a price? $135.67. That's enough to choke a horse. So over here, I just wanted to show you this little exploded view. And what you're looking at, there's the gearbox output shaft, which goes into the pulley. And underneath the deck is the housing. And in that housing, you have two seals. You have an upper and lower seal. 070 is a seal, and 050 is a seal. I replaced both those parts. They were a little bit worn. I also replaced that center bearing. That bearing, along with the bearing in the gearbox, are what locks that shaft in place and allows it to turn and turn true. Anytime you're messing around down in here, at minimum, replace the seals. They're not that expensive, and they're not difficult at all to replace. You'd be surprised. So basically, I replaced this bearing here on the lower unit, along with the 3 bearings in the gearbox, 2 seals on the lower unit, and 2 seals on the gearbox. And to be honest with you, after I had gotten into it and realized what I had, I could have just gotten by with replacing seals and lived with all the bearings. They were new. So there you have it. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. And I hope you like this video, and hope you'll subscribe. And again, if you have any questions or concerns with your project, let me know. You guys take care. Thanks.